members of this esteemed committee, Comrade Mutasa, I see you are sitting in the backing at him, and we also got a city family. Thank you very much. Today, I want to do clearly. I think we did go after something. Ministers who are here, former ministers, the sitting arrangement, Honorable Chidhakwa, I saw you.
Yes, I'm here, Chairman. I'm here, Chairman.
I think if you come behind Honorable Mutasa, you will be very safe. The Commissioner General of Police is not here. The Permanent Secretary is Home Affairs. I see you are here. Mine's current Sec, you're here. Amtaziwo mlipo, wako Didyanga mlipo, Sukutwezi here. Tine listi yataka kumira mapolisa kuti vatichagiro vanhu vakagona kuita basa chaizvo. Vamwe vanenge vasipo. Former Commissioner General, we had tasked the top cop of the country to do his job by getting him here. I don't know, is there anyone from the police who's telling you who can talk about the whereabouts of former Commissioner General Dr. Chombo? Thank you, DCG Matibili.
Chair, simply to indicate that I'm representing the Commissioner General. That specifically, I'm here for what you wrote on the summons and not about the former Commissioner General.
We also asked him to try and locate him, and he had assured us he'll try and do that as a top cop. Since you're representing him, would you have an answer to that? Why he's not here?
No, he didn't brief me on that one.
It's good with the current Minister of Home Affairs here, hearing that there are some citizens who cannot be found by the police. I'm sure that's up to the Committee on Defense and Security. The Commissioner General, as you know, every Monday is briefing with His Excellency. So he's on his way when he's done. The mining houses that are here, ZMDC Chairperson, when you are here, I'd say to Mr. Akio that I hope they're all here. Can I get that confirmation from you? Your JV partners. So all your JV partners are here. Zimra as well, we had asked you to be here.
We're here.
Thank you very much. And then the Minister of Finance. Sorry, on your name and your designation. Can you also switch on the mic?
Madam Chairman, Accountant General, the Chairman of Secretary is coming out of the country.
And the Minister of Finance is also outside the country.
He came back over the weekend. I don't think he's arrested.
We had invited the Minister of Finance to be here. Yeah, we also invited the former Minister of Finance, Mr Temba Mliswa, to be here, but he gave an excuse that he is not in the country. Are there any stakeholders that have left out? 70 joint venture partners have confirmed they are here. But the police had not been given a letter by Parliament. He really wanted to come. He called me. He also called the acting speaker. But Parliament did not send him a letter as such. It's only proper that we follow the general process that we have to abide by. So he's not here because he's defaulted. We also felt, since there's an Honourable Vice President, he's not one that we can just say come. So we have resolved as a committee that on Friday the 13th, together with the current Director General of CIO, they will be here. I also see Mr. Bonyongwe is here, the former Director General of CIO. Okay, I think without much ado, I want to get into the business of the day. I really cannot introduce everyone. I'm sure you appreciate, but I think through the various parastatals, ZMDC, which is here, they certainly represent the joint venture partners, and there's confirmation that they're here. The permanent secretaries are here, the ministers are here, Director General of the Police are equally here, represented by DCG Matibiri. We had asked all the DCGs to be here, operations, administration, crime. They're here. Thank you very much. Also, other stakeholders, Marangi, are they here? If there's anybody that are left out, yes. And then we also had Mr. Mabudu is here. Thank you very much. Are there any people that I have not noted so that you can speak through the mic and let me know that you are here?
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
My name is Gitsi Andoro, a lawyer. May I inquire if you thought there's been a session of a union board representing former employees of Munodawafa, that the National Union of Mines Party hired to see whether this is done. Thank you.
Yes, it's true. They were invited, so you are representing them.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you.
So the whole country is here.
Mr. Chingodza, are you here, former General Manager, MMCZ? Mr. Chingodza, are you here, former General Manager, MMCZ? Former General Manager, MMCZ, Mr. Chingodza.
Mr. Chair, it is Edo who is present.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will go straight into the introductions. I think before we proceed, Honorable Minister Dr. Mpofu, the Speaker informed me yesterday of the letter that you had written to him pertaining to the reason why I cannot be in the chair while you are there. So that letter is certainly receiving due attention. The committee also made its recommendations to the Speaker. So it's a matter that is actually being dealt with as we speak. So until it is resolved and we hear from the Speaker and move forward, we cannot accommodate you for now, and the Parliament will be responding to you pertaining to differences. So you are excused. Thank you. And I'm sorry that Parliament had not written to you on those circumstances which are still in-house.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
May I therefore kindly ask Sekeramayi and Chombo to just occupy the front seats. You see, you're like twins. I look at your heads and you're all white. So it's only proper. Thanks to Chairperson. When you didn't have to, like, what do you know the white foot and the school? Okay, thank you. I will introduce myself. Honorable Temba Mliswa. I'm the Member of Parliament for the Northern constituency. I'm also the Chairperson for the Portfolio Committee on Mines and Energy. And unlike my colleagues, I'm not going for primary elections. I will ask members of the committee to introduce themselves. On my right.
My name is Honorable Obert, but let's not much obvious.
I'm Trevor Sarwaka, Member of Parliament for Mutasa Central in Manikari.
My name is Honorable Fani Mnengami, representing a constituency called Glenville North here in Harare.
I'm Mabo Kisa from Uzumba Maramba Fumbo, representing Mashisti Province. I'm Basidia Majaya, Member of Parliament for my Central Province.
Prosper Chapfio Mtiani, the member of Sikon constituent Kuchipinga.
Masamo Matemanata, MP for Pepe Central, Midlands Province.
Are we done?
Yes.
You will see that I'm sure you notice that there are a few members of Parliament here in this committee, but there have been primary elections, and yes, some of them have already been taken out before, so they've gone to the HQ to appeal. There are elections happening, so that's why you see that we're not here, especially those from the ruling party. So don't think that we kind of stage manage this. We have told them to really go and appeal because we'd like them to be back here quickly. So whether the appeal will be successful or not, I'm sure Honorable Chombo and Comrade Mutasa will be the best to respond on another day. But we are committed to this, but there are primary elections which are happening. CVs are being vetted and so forth. So that's why you see we are quite thin today. I'll introduce Mr. Gandiwa, who's the assistant clerk, who's here with us. I'll also introduce Lady Spise, who is the legal counsel to the Parliament of Zimbabwe. On my right is Mrs. Gotu, she's the researcher, and the committee clerk is sitting right next to Mrs. Spise. We've got Mr. Nyamuraba, who is equally the PR officer for this committee. I'll tell you the order so that I think it will go on and take off, and the people concerned will certainly be given an opportunity to then take off. Members, this is a very simple exercise. We could be many, but these are the institutions that you represent. It's only proper that we do it properly. It's not a witch hunting. It's not. That's why you're all seated together, because you don't witch hunt with everyone there. This is institutional, and that's what it is. And I think it's enshrined in the constitution of the country. And we are happy that even former ministers are here. Comrade Mutasa, we appreciate that. I'm sure you even know better as first Speaker of the House of Assembly that the way Parliament works, we are really humbled by that. Dr. Chombo as well, Dr. Sekeramayi. We don't take it lightly. I think this is leading by example. I must applaud you for that. I think it certainly makes our country, really respectable, because you are able to appear before an institution that holds you accountable. I want to say that. I equally want to say to former permanent secretaries that are here, you are the chief accounting officers of the institutions that are involved with mines, and you are here in that capacity. You are not here in individual capacities, but you are here in the capacities that you served in these institutions. So I just want to make this clear. The police as well, law enforcement agent, you are also there to protect us. You are also there to also arrest us. So you are here to respond to issues pertaining to what you do. Zimra, we know why we are here. Diamonds, revenue, tax, how much tax did these entities pay? We also want to MMCZ, were these diamonds marketed through you or not? I think these are some of the issues. Marange Human Rights, Marange Group Trust, they are here, they are on the ground. There are also issues that happened there, which they'll also talk about. We also have the Russians, DTZ, who are here. They also involved in mining in Chimani. So really, the joint venture partners that are here, did you reach a side of the bargain pertaining to what you're supposed to do? ZMDC representing the government, what did you do in terms of that? Those are really the issues which are before us. The mine workers as well, they were affected. That's why they're here in terms of the mines. They equally want to give their side of the story, so that we also appreciate the security forces that are here. Were also empowered, and that concession was not given to individuals. The understanding it was given to you because you needed to run your institutions from that revenue. Is that correct or not? Those are the issues which are here. There were companies that you had mandated to be able to run that. They'll also be here to respond to those issues. So what we are going to do today, so that we really try and do this in a manner which is efficient. And I remain also, you can always come in from time to time when you feel you have a better idea in terms of going this. This is for the country. It's not for the community. It's not for you. It's for the country. So we are here as Zimbabweans. We'll try and get the Ministry of Mines to respond to the issues pertaining to licensing, who they gave their licenses to, and all that, because they are the authority in terms of giving licenses. You should name the entities that we given those mines. ZMDC comes in as a government representative, also with the joint venture partners. ZMC, we have dealt with them in many ways, but it's the JV partners that we have not heard from, pertaining to your role, and was it done properly, and all that. The police, minerals, border control unit, we need to report on that, officer commanding. We need to report on the deployment on the forces to Marange to go and take over the mines. That's what we need to just hear from. So everybody will be given an opportunity to speak. So we'll start with the Minister of Mines. Then of course the NDC, they have to come in. They will confirm that true that happened. We'll then go to the law enforcement agents in terms of coming in, their role. We'll then go to Zimra, who are here. We also want MMCZ to come in to confirm the production, that was it going through them and all that. In summary, whether the 15 billion was mentioned or not, because I think it's become the talk of town. But what we're doing, whether the 15 billion was there or not, we'd still do. I think it's important for everybody to understand this. Yes, the former president was very clear in that 15 billion had gone missing in the diamonds. We take that seriously. He was the former president. Gabi, whether he's not president or not, it's neither here or there. But I think he was responsible for the administration of the country as the CEO. Would want to know from those involved, sitting in cabinet, giving reports, that how did he reach that amount? Certainly, no one at the time when he was president ever said it's not true. So for us to say it's not true when he's out of office, certainly is not acceptable. I think we must be clear and follow a due process. So the Minister of Mines at the time must be able to also tell us more on that, so that we don't waste time on certain issues. The 15 billion is an issue. The country wants to know. Others say it was never there. Others say there was more. So this brings to closure all that. So we are not here to accuse anybody, but we're here to hear oral evidence pertaining to all these issues. So, Minister of Mines, the Minister is away. Permanent Secretary Munodawafa is here. So, I will ask Mr. Chidhakwa to come in terms of what you expected to report to this House, production of diamonds, the licensing, and all that, the revenue generated, and all that. I appreciate that finance was important because there was mention of money coming into the fiscus from diamonds. And I need to explain this so that people understand where finance comes in. Because when you say to the nation, we're expecting 2 billion from diamonds, it must come in. If it does not come in, we'll then ask, were the projections wrong or right? And then if we don't tackle it, then there's speculation. So let's be very clear about that without even wasting much time. So I think, Honorable Chidhakwa, I will give you the floor. May you take oath, and then we'll go straight into the business of the day. Are there any other issues, members, that I've left out which you might contribute to? I think so far so good.
Thank you, Chairman.
So before you speak,
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God.
thank you very much. On the very lighter note before you start, somebody said, but you didn't shave. Why? I said, but since I became chairman of the Mines Committee, there's this inquiry on diamonds. They started with white hair is just growing on me. I can say white beards now. So I never had white beard until I was the chairman of this committee. So that's how effective this inquiry has been. Very good.
Thank you, Chairman. The honorable members of Parliament that are here, I want to recognize and thank you for the invitation. I had hoped that the Permanent Secretary, with the specific figures of, or rather the specific dates and names of companies, would have given us that. But I'm sure that you will still get to him, because I may not be able to say which company exactly was allocated a license in which year. That is information that obviously sits with our ministry. But Chairman, I want to just say that diamonds in Zimbabwe started much earlier than 2005. 2005. We have on record activities at River Ranch. We have on record operations in very small quantities elsewhere. And in 2005, I understand, is when the Marange diamonds come into the picture. And I understand the briefing that I was given was that at that time there were thousands of people who had moved into Marange. And the thousands of people who had moved into Marange naturally were mining diamonds, Semakorokoza, Gweja, if you want to call them, and selling diamonds. And what I understand is that, and I think Honorable Mpofu would be best suited for that because he was minister at that time. But what I understand is that that obviously would have caused a security threat to the country, because once you have people mining diamonds and selling diamonds and so on and so forth, naturally you begin to see groups emerging, you begin to see each group wanting to defend itself, wanting to control certain territories, certain areas. And so it became a security threat from that perspective. And I understand it was therefore important for the government to make decisions on the structure that our diamond industry would assume at that time. And the decision was made that ZMDC would go into joint venture partnerships with a number of companies, and the process was therefore rolled out to ensure that the companies that had applied for licenses would in fact be given the licenses. And they were given licenses at different times, as the record from the ministry will demonstrate. Others as late as 2011, 2012, 2010, 2011. And I want to say, Mr. Chairman, that in terms of the Mines and Minerals Act, all special grants shall be granted for a period of 3 years. And that whoever has been granted that license for that period is then expected to renew the license. And the renewal of the license will be predicated on the performance of the company during the 3 years, whether or not it complied with the various laws of Zimbabwe, with the agreements that will have been signed, agreements with ZMDC, environmental impact assessment requirements that the country requires, issues to do with the corporate social aspects, the plowing back to the communities in terms of the Indigenization Act as it was then. And so we note that the period of 3 years for the various companies was due to expire at different times. The anniversary date was different. And let me leave that at that and hold you hanging and go back to the issue of when I come in as Minister of Mines. As Minister of Mines, naturally you meet with your principal and you get a briefing on the various areas, and we did so on all the minerals, the gold,
I want you to clarify what the principle is.
Well, yes, the president of the country. And so I met the former president of the country, the president at that time, President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. and got a briefing on what the state of the gold sector was, the diamond sector, and expectations of the previous government. And one of the expectations critical to this discussion was that when diamonds were discovered, there was great anticipation and expectation on the part of Zimbabweans that the country would benefit from the flows of diamonds into the fiscus. And you will notice that the agreements, therefore, required that 50% of the shares be owned by the government of Zimbabwe through ZMDC, and Marange also, because some of the joint venture partners were with Marange and some of them were with ZMDC. And so the expectation was that by owning 50% of the diamond companies, the companies would be able to bring on the back of the 50% the equipment, the technical expertise, the technical know-how that was required to do diamond mining. And on the part of government, the expectation was that the concessions would then be made available to the government in terms and in accordance with the laws of Zimbabwe. And so the joint venture companies started. The expectation was that they would make profits. Having made profits, they would declare dividends, and that each of the parties, the foreign parties, the joint venture partners, would take their share, repatriate it to their countries in terms of the laws, and the government of Zimbabwe would benefit from its 50% of the dividend, which would come to the companies. Obviously, having taken account of that which is required for reinvestment, expansion of the company, retooling of the company, you must take that into account before you declare any dividend. And so those were the expectations. And when I was appointed Minister of Mines, I learned very quickly that no company had declared a dividend, and that the government had not benefited from the dividends. There is a difference between dividends and the royalties that the companies were expected to pay. And the companies continued to pay their royalties, and I hope in accordance with the ZIMRA Act, the Ministry of Finance. But I was advised that no dividends were paid. And so one of the things that we spent time thinking about was, how do we ensure that the companies actually mined diamonds, made profits, and declared dividends? And we went into a discussion at different levels of government, at officials levels, at ministerial levels, and the president had occasion also, when he met with the Botswana president, the then president, met with the then president of Botswana, Malawi, and when he came back, he advised me that he had met with the then president of Malawi and of Botswana, and that they had discussed that I go to Botswana to look at their diamond mining system, which we dutifully did. We went to Botswana, the team visited the mines in Botswana, and we came back, briefed the then president about it, and slowly there was a feeling, and the feeling that perhaps we needed to change the structure of the diamond industry. Perhaps having too many companies in the diamond industry was difficult to manage. It is, I must say to you, honorable members of parliament, to all the delegates here, my experience over the last 4 years, it is much easier, much easier to run the chrome industry, much easier to run the gold industry, and any other mineral that you can think about. But much more difficult, much more sophisticated, very sophisticated, in fact, to run the diamond industry. And it is because of the value that is embedded in very small stones. A truck of chrome, 30 tons, may have lower value than a 10-carat stone, depending on what that 10-carat stone looks like. And therefore, it becomes much more complicated. And so we sat down to look at all those complexities of how to market. Those of you who were close to the industry will recall that one of the things that I did, having talked to the industry, was to look at the marketing structure and say, how do you market diamonds? And everybody somewhere was giving you what they thought was the best structure. And you had to make a decision as to how to proceed on the marketing of diamonds. And everybody said, yeah, it is in marketing that you lose the money. It is in marketing that you make the money. If you get the marketing right, then you are okay. And so one of the things that we did was to familiarize ourselves with the systems. We had a bidding system at MMCZ, and the details of how it is structured and will be given by MMCZ. But there was a bidding structure where people would bid for diamonds, and as they bid for diamonds, would say, this is what I'm offering. And when I sat with people, I was told that because the producer of the diamonds must put a price and say, this is what I want to be paid for this stone. The buyer of the diamonds, mostly international buyers of diamonds, would put a price and say, this is what I am willing to pay for this stone. And we would then have our own organizations having done a best price, or what they call the lowest price that Zimbabwe must get from that particular stone. And you hear stories of the buyer's price being higher than the price of the producer, the price of the producer being higher than the best price that we will have set out. We tried to investigate those, but you actually do not get the information that gives you the proof that there were differences. There will obviously be differences between buyer and supplier because the buyer wants to pay the least. The supplier, the producer, wants to get the most. But we then were also advised that there is a system called the auction system where you can auction diamonds, and that the system in Dubai and in Belgium were based on the auction system. We were told about the Anglo-American system, the De Beers system, which is the system of evaluating diamonds and giving prices to diamonds and placing them and so on and so forth. And we felt that perhaps it was better for us at our stage of development to go to Belgium and see what it is like. And therefore we asked ZMDC and the joint venture partners to go and auction diamonds in Brussels, in Belgium, in Antwerp. And so they went to Antwerp. We did I don't remember whether it was 1 or 2 auctions there. And the prices that we were getting clearly, and I think the numbers will demonstrate if they are called upon, the prices that we were getting in Belgium were much higher than the prices that we got from here. We had an unfortunate incident where a platinum investor who had sued the government of Zimbabwe then went and attached some of our diamonds to the tune of $38 million in Brussels. And so we could not continue with the auctions in Antwerp because of that incident. We knew that that case would not go anywhere. And we fought hard because we knew that it would not be proper at law in any country for the sins of somebody to be visited upon somebody else. And by this I mean, if the person had won an order against the government of Zimbabwe, it would be wrong at law to have that order visited upon the companies, which were separate legal entities. They were joint ventures with a government company, yes, but they were separate legal entities capable of suing and being sued. And therefore, we knew that, and indeed, the Belgian law, the Belgian courts gave an order after a few weeks that those diamonds must be released, and that if they were kept, the person who was holding them would be charged 10,000 euros a day. And so they released them. And so we then moved we said, let's try Dubai, because Dubai also accounts for approximately 38% of the diamond marketing now. So we went there, and we had several auctions until one day some young men decided to switch our diamonds for rubbish, bringing stones. When you go into an auction, you are given the cups of diamonds so that you can put them there and you can evaluate them so that you can give a price to the diamonds. And of course there were cameras, but this young man had the audacity to bring in diamonds, rubbish diamonds, put them on what he had put as third grade, not gem, there's the gem, near gem, and the industrial. So he put what were industrials there and took the industrials, put them on near gem, took the near gem and put them where the gem was, and took the gem and put them in his pocket. And all this on camera. And as he went out, the people went in, checked, and so that's what had happened. They checked the cameras and saw him doing that, and he was arrested. Diamonds were recovered, brought back, but we felt very uneasy now continuing with auctions in Dubai after that, when that had happened. And so we resolved to come back home and set up our own auction system. And so we tasked the MMCZ to look at a structure that we would adopt to have our own auction. And it is the auction system that is now being used at MMCZ. I cannot, and nobody can say it is foolproof, but I think it was an attempt to have as much value from our diamonds as possible. Now, Chairman, I want to go back to all these were efforts to try and get value for our money. But one of the things that came was a discussion that said, let's consolidate all the companies into one company. And so we would then say, because all the companies were doing alluvial diamond mining, except Muroa, which was outside the Marange area. And we knew that sooner or later the alluvial diamonds would be exhausted. But we also knew that there was a possibility of us having a conglomerate and kimberlitic diamonds. But those require now heavy machines. They require now you going deep into the womb of the earth to look for them. And it requires much heavier capital investment. And so we thought, if we brought them all together and they pooled their resources together, then we would be able to start real serious exploration on kimberlitic diamonds. And so we were now preparing the end of the alluvial diamonds and making sure that we were comfortably situated in the mining of kimberlite diamonds. And so that's what we did. We started negotiations with the companies. We worked out a structure and we said, yes, you may have been owning 50% of a company where government had 50%. Government would continue to own 50% of the consolidated company. But the individual companies would now share the 50% depending on their contributions to the project. So if your asset base, the machines that you have and everything, was worth so many $1 million, and as a percentage of the total value of the consolidated company, it would earn you 7%. So you would earn 7% of the shares. That's what we worked out. And so much resistance from the beginning. And we later learned that some of the companies were not very unhappy with this arrangement because they did not have value in themselves. A lot of their equipment, some of them, there were companies that owned the equipment, sure, which had bought equipment for themselves, but there were companies which simply were leasing equipment, and therefore they knew that they couldn't put leased equipment and leased value, leased assets on the table to say this is what we are bringing into the joint venture. And so there was that resistance. And for 7 months, we went into this discussion, into this negotiation, until we realized that we were not going anywhere. So one was to say, if we consolidate the companies, we have one marketing system, we have a mineral accounting process that was common for that company. They would have mines, subsidiaries, mines, but of the same company. And so you were able, much in a better way, to account for the production of diamonds and the marketing of diamonds and the resources coming out of the diamond mining sector. And no, we couldn't get it done until one day we discovered that the licenses, except one, all the company's licenses had expired. And I want to say that the only license that had not expired was the DTZ OSGEO license, which had about 2 months to expire. And so we called the companies and we told them that you are operating on the basis of expired licenses. They said, no, but some of them said, we were told that we can mine diamonds to perpetuity. Some of them said, it's not our responsibility to renew the licenses. Now, acting as a regulator, when you administer the Mines and Minerals Act, you regulate. You therefore must make sure that companies are in compliance with the Mines and Minerals Act, and we told them that we needed that compliance. And but at that time, the discussion was now that we would terminate the licenses. Well, not terminate the licenses because the licenses had been terminated by virtue of their expiry. And naturally, the companies went to the courts and went to court and appealed against our decision, which is in their right. And we went for several months in court, and without doubt, for all the companies, and the record is there from the High Court to state clearly that the licenses had in fact expired. I got to 2 o'clock midnight making sure that personally looking at all the licenses, and when we went to court, I knew that we had a solid case because the licenses had expired. There are companies which we then went into negotiation with. We went into negotiation with DMC and agreed on the value of their assets, and then we bought them out. We went into negotiation with DTZ Osgeo. We took account of the fact that their license still had 2 months to go, and that negotiation again yielded a situation where we would take over their equipment as ZCDC, which had recently at that time been formed. And so we now had a consolidation not of the companies. Our desire had been a consolidation of the companies as going entities. And when that failed, and we discovered that the licenses had expired, we then, after the court decisions had been made, we then consolidated all the land into one special grant, which currently sits with ZCDC. So all the ground that expired from the companies, that was taken from the companies, is now sitting in ZCDC. And the idea was that because the idea of moving away from alluvial diamonds to conglomerate remains a reality. The fact that we do not have the resources, the financial wherewithal to do kimberlitic mining remains a reality. We will still have to look for a partner with the technical expertise and with the capital resource to go underground. And so that is where we left it at. And ZCDC were working on exploration activities for kimberlite diamond discoveries. And I want to say at this point that every minister who goes into the Ministry of Mines has a different set of challenges. If Minister Mpofu had the challenges of thousands of people in Marange and bringing sanity and order to the industry at that time, my challenges as Minister of Mines were to do with accountability of the companies. Could we sit as leaders of this country with companies where we owned 50% of the shares in diamond companies and not be able to get dividends from those companies? Is what sits on your conscience as a minister all the time. You must ask yourself, am I doing Zimbabwe a favor by allowing a situation? And that is what drove this whole process. A process which some said, are you signing yourself a death warrant? Do you want to die? But we had to do it. It was either I resign and go home and not be there to make the decisions, or be there and make the decisions. And you must make decisions. And in mines, you must make the decisions. And when you make decisions in mines, they hurt one side very seriously. And they gratify another. Whether you're talking about a gold mine, a gold concession, just one claim. If you make a decision on the claim that so and so is the rightful owner, the other one is aggrieved so much. And so these are decisions you make that you must contend with. And so, Mr. Chairman, I think as a preamble to this discussion, this is what I will say. I think that I have a clear conscience. The decisions that we implemented were taken by Cabinet as the executive arm of this country. The consolidation of the diamond industry was discussed extensively and adopted in Cabinet. And we acted on that and proceeded to implement that. The desire being that we needed to see a diamond industry. We had no experience with diamonds. We had to learn how to run diamonds. We had lots of experience in gold. But we had people like Mabudu who had spent 10, 12, 15 years in the diamond industry in other countries in Botswana. And we thought, let's bring them together to drive ZCDC. So this is where we are, Chairman, and if there are any issues, I am here to respond to what I can. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think members of the committee have taken note of your evidence you're giving us. Just a point of clarity, what we do now, ask questions at the end, but clarity coming. What I just wanted to find out was, when you got in as Minister of Mines, the licenses had already expired, or they expired whilst you were in office?
Chairman, some of them expired before I got into the Ministry of Mines. And I think one or two are the ones that expired during the time when I was in office. Because 3 years, if you count 3 years from 2005, those that expired in 2009, 2010, 2011, and unfortunately we only discovered it much later. And when you hear about the cadastre system, Mr. Chairman, it is such an important part of running the Ministry of Mines, because the cadastre system will remind the officer after 3 years that the license has expired. It will actually bleep that and print out a letter that says this license is actually expired. And this is why it is important for Parliament to just push the Mines and Minerals. I'm happy you have done that, to push the Mines and Minerals Act, because it is what contains the cadastre system. We would have discovered this on exactly the day they expired. But because people have to go back to the files to check which one is expired, and you can't do that with all the thousands of gold certificates, the thousands of chrome certificates, the thousands of... You can't do that.
I think I've been answered.
Thank you.
In terms of clarity, Permanent Secretary, it takes us back to the Permanent Secretary who issued licenses. Chief Accounting Officer, your evidence, please. I follow. The minister came in, he was the minister before, he didn't issue the licenses, the licenses expired. The Permanent Secretary is the Chief Accounting Officer. Who did you give the licenses to? Because we want to understand who you gave the licenses to, and then everything will follow. So that's the sort of pattern that we want to follow. The minister says yes, the license is given out. To whom were the licenses given out to? Who was the Permanent Secretary? Was it Mr. Mpofu?
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
Yes, that is the simple one. The chief accounting officer, whatever ministry that you're putting the licenses, you know, when they should expire, you know. So without wasting much time, respond to those issues.
Thank you, Chair. I must indicate that I joined the ministry in October 2011. And at that time, the licenses had already been issued. So I don't know if I can just highlight those operating companies who were mining in Marange, because those are what I found.
Yeah, it's important for us to tell us what you found when you were PS.
The companies which had licenses and operating were Marange Resources, which was 100% government owned, Bada Diamonds, which had government at 50% shareholding, Anjin, which had 50% government shareholding, DMC, which also had 50% government shareholding, and then Jinan. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair, I had left another one, which is DTs at OSGO.
Yes, you know you come before this committee, we write to you and we expect you to have first-hand information. I thought you'd have a file and you have access to any information in that ministry so that you then don't guess, because I end up asking you, what about the security sector? I don't want to ask you questions. I want you to tell us who was mining. If the security sector was given, do your job, tell us who in the security care sector was given. We told you, come to this committee and tell us, during your time, what were the diamonds operations? We have no time to waste, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I confirm that the letter which was written to me said, explain the diamond mining policies implemented during your time. And this was a question which arose out of the presentation which have just been made. To help us, Honorable Chair, maybe we could be assisted by the current Chair to indicate the list of those companies who are in the books, because we are all here, so it can help.
So now you see, before we can go anywhere else, there's an answer why licenses expire but still functional. I mean, exactly, before we even go anywhere, the ministry is responsible for the licenses. Then ZMDC is responsible for mining. So we must be very clear on that. And you must account to the time when you're in office. What did you do to regularize? So all these people were mining illegal. And then suddenly one day you decide to just go and take over. So the revenue, where was it going? Let's get serious with this committee in terms of us giving the information that's required. There's an aspect of regularization that you must answer to as the chief accounting officer. Whether the 10,000, a million papers of gold miners, it's nothing to do with us. Government is functional. There are people being paid at the end of the month to do that. So basically that's what we need from you in terms of regularization. You heard what the minister said. Only about 2 companies are the ones that had licenses. The rest didn't. Who was the PEMSEC at the time? What did the PEMSEC do about that? The money, the revenue generated, where did it go? On the point of clarity, Honorable Ngami.
Thank you, Chair. I think when you asked him to mention the companies which were licensed or which were operating during this time, he only mentioned those ones. I think the companies which had licenses, but he didn't mention those ones without the license, but still they operate. So maybe if you can clarify, of these companies which he gave to us, what were the other companies who were mining but without getting licenses?
I hope you've taken note of that in terms of clarity. Yes, Honorable Ngwe.
Information. Tapping out from the PEMSEC, that was the period to run office. Which apparatus to run office.
The honorable members are asking pertinent questions. You're in office as a chief accounting officer. Which mining houses with licenses equally without? Because we now are being told that even those without licenses were mining. Honorable, yes, can you please give us a detailed report?
Thank you, Chair. I have already indicated when I joined the ministry, I was redeployed from the ministry in September 2013. So I spent just barely about two years. Going back to the question and what you have asked, I've indicated that, Honorable Chair, Maranga Resources had a license and it was operating. GMC, which is Diamond Mining Company, had a license and it was operating. Mbada Diamond, it had a license and it was operating. DTZ, it had a license and it was operating. Jinan had a license and it was operating. What Anjin was also licensed and operating, and those are the companies which I have already indicated, Honorable Chair. And as it has already been indicated by the Honorable Former Minister, the question was which companies were operating and which have been which have now had their licenses cancelled, which have been consolidated. And I would want to believe that would also indicate those companies which were operating, which then their licenses had expired. But when I joined, when I joined the.
Are you not aware of a license given to Kusena or Kenyan?
When I arrived, the Honorable Chair, these are the companies which I found operating. But of course, you would find they could be at a certain point in time.
Let's have tried with the issue of giving licenses, and then there's the issue of operation. From your part, giving licenses, the operation will go to things ZMTC. We've got everybody here. ZMTC is the arm that does the mining for government. So on the operation aspect, that is ZMTC's baby. On the licensing aspect, it is your task. Whose licenses did you give to?
Honorable Chair, when licenses are being issued, like in this case, because they had to go through the government's mining arm, it goes through ZMDC, who would then make a recommendation to the ministry. And when the ministry has looked at it and satisfied that it meets the requirements, it then goes upwards for approval. So maybe with your indulgence, ZMDC would indicate which one of those who had actually applied and were not yet mining. I'm strictly referring to those which I found licensed and operating in Marange legally. And as you recall, Honorable Chair, at that time, our main thrust was to make sure that we comply with the requirements of the KPCs of the operating companies.
Yes, I think we need to make sure who can be later. You have told us, we've heard your evidence, we've got to know who was the PS after you.
It was Professor Gudyanga.
Professor Gudyanga, can you then take it from there? May take on first.
I swear that the evidence that I'll give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, just to mention that I didn't receive any invitation letter to this committee, so I'm not aware exactly what I was going to be asked. I only got that I'm supposed to be here on Saturday, this last Saturday, when some official visited my farm in Headlands and saw my wife to say I'm required to come to this. So I'm not sure of the exact requirement that I was supposed to give. But nonetheless, following the question
okay, thank you. I want to thank you for, if you can switch off the mic, please. I want to thank you for attending. True, it was a difficult to get hold of you. We went into the office of the President and Cabinet, we went to the Public Service Commission, we went to the ministry, they could not give us anything, and we want to thank the police for finally tracking you down, because we didn't know where you are, and we had to resort to the police. So police, job well done, because all institutions could not identify or locate it. So we thank you for finding Mr. Gudyanga. He is a man well sought with this, but now that he's here, I'll tell you what to expect, Mr. Gudyanga, from me as Permanent Secretary. What is it that you found in office in terms of the diamond mining sector? You had the minister then, Honorable Chidhakwa, who alluded to a number of issues pertaining to companies that had not been licensed, the issue of CDC being put in place because all that had expired. I'm sure you would not have made those decisions without you, the PEMSEC, also part of those decisions he made. Can you just explain more to the committee pertaining to those issues?
Thank you. I think the Minister, Honorable Former Minister, gave a very comprehensive development of where we are, where we were. Just to confirm that during my time, the companies that were operating were Mbada, Anjin, Jinan, DMC, Marange Resources, BTZ. Then there were other companies that were also on the ground, but they were not really operating very extensively. There was Kusena, Jinyame, and Lera, but these were not really producing much. I just wanted also to add to what the Honorable Minister mentioned about the need to consolidate. He explained comprehensively about the marketing, but there was also a security nightmare with all these companies who had their separate security, and it wasn't convincing to us that the security was tight to ensure that our diamonds are all accounted for. So that was one of the additional reasons why consolidation became imperative. I don't know what else you want me to add, Chairman, but this is what I thought I should clarify to the committee.
The Minister clearly articulated the issue of ZCDC. And you seem to be leaving that out as a measure that had been undertaken to ensure the smooth diamond mining operation as a result of having gone to Botswana and seeing the way Botswana had been embarking their diamond mining. Can you tell us more information on ZCDC?
Yes, ZCDC was formed as a decision of cabinet, and we are, as a ministry, implementing so that we have a very transparent, easily accountable system for the diamond industry. And as the minister was saying, you needed a big company that could go into the next phase of the diamond mining, in other words, kimberlitic mining. These small companies never went to do the kimberlitic mining, and we had no evidence that any of them was serious yet in order to do that. They were all spending much time on scooping the alluvial, which really didn't require much capital. Also, to say in the agreements that were entered into between the various companies or investors and government, there was supposed to be an investment amount, a quantum amount from different companies. Not all of them, in fact, none of them fully put in the required investment as comparable to the resource that ZMDC was bringing to the table. So that's another reason why consolidation was also taken into account.
When ZCDC was formed, who was the board?
So who was the?
Who were the board members of ZCDC?
The ministry compiled a list of names to the Office of the President, the Cabinet, and then they vetted and came up with about 4 whom they thought should be interim. And in that circumstances, the minister appointed me to join that group and become its chairman. So I was the chairman of the board because the numbers had not been complete, because the vetting that was done eliminated some who were not appointed by the Office of the President Cabinet.
So you were the chairperson of a 4-member board, including yourself?
Well, acting chairman of the consolidation.
No, I understand, but how many board members were you working with?
There were 4 others.
In terms of the regularization of these licenses, which are being talked about from a clarity point of view, who in the ministry is responsible for that, to ensure that they are up to it? Yes, the minister talks about the cadastral system, but we didn't have one. And who was responsible for ensuring that there is regularization?
Well, it's us as administrators who found out that some of these licenses had actually expired. Yes, it's the administration in the ministry. In other words, PEMSEC and the other officials in the ministry. And that's how we unearthed that the licenses for most of these companies had actually expired.
In terms of Kusena and Ganyama, did you have sight of their licenses?
Yes, we did, but most of these licenses were more or less generically similar, and there wasn't very much difference between all the joint venture agreements.
The board, did you get an appointment letter to the acting chairperson?
Yes, I did.
Okay. In terms of clarity of this issue, it's point of yes.
That's point of clarity to Mr. Gudyanga, through Mr. Chairman. When Mr. Gudyanga, when you became a chairman to the board, was it in terms of the in terms of the law of this country, or it was a boardroom program? Then still on that, when you became the board chairman, then can you put names with regard to members who were in that board so that we get details?
Yes, I can give you names that were appointed by the Office of the President Cabinet to be in that board. I think there is Ms. Chela, there was Mr. Musha, there was Mr. Mpefu. I've forgotten the other one. I'm no longer in the ministry, by the way, and I'm no longer in ZCDC either. But those were the names that were approved by Office of the President Cabinet.
Follow up, Chairman.
Okay, follow up.
Just follow up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. He hasn't concluded with regard to the chairmanship as to what really happened, how did he got there. He just said he got an appointment, if he can clarify that. But just for clarity's sake, Mr. Chairman, we have Mr. Mkwegwezeke, we have Mr. Musha, who are members of the board, who happen to be coming from part of the Chimaniman district, where you happen to be a person who is coming from there as well. Was it mere coincidence, or it was purely out of the fact that you had no one else with that expertise of diamonds except in Chimaniman?
I now remember that the fourth member is Mr. Chidhakwa, Comrade Chidhakwa, who had been recommended by both the Ministry of Defense and the community in Chidhakwa. As I said, we compiled, I think, up to 12, 15 names, which we sent to the Office of the President Cabinet. And they are the ones who vetted and gave us 4. So really, the final choice was not me. The inference that they were members because they came from Manicaland, it's really unfortunate, and it's not true.
I think what the member is trying to point out, according to the constitution of the country, there's got to be regional balance in the boards so that there's no speculation. You cannot have a situation where there's an imbalance in terms of representation. So that's, I think, what he's trying to clarify, that is it only people from that village who knew about diamonds? Or I think that's the point. I think we'll come to more questions as we proceed with this.
Can I just again reiterate? We compelled as many as 12 to 15, I can't remember the exact number, to the Office of the President.
That's what I'm saying. It is not your fault. We've understood. We are moving on.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just trying to just buttress his question that it's within the constitution of the country that there should be regional balance in terms of the boards. That's all. Who vets, that's another issue. But yes, you are right. You gave 50 and only 4 were approved. And I think it's in order. I think we need to really continue. In terms of ZCDC, was this company created in the ministry or through ZMDC?
Through ZMDC. In terms of its formation, so that it operates as an arm of ZMDC subsidiary.
Okay, thank you very much. We go to ZMDC now. We're going from the ministry, we are now going to ZMDC. Sorry, I did not noted you. Can you proceed with your point of clarity?
Thank you, Chair. You just said too, how many meetings did you sit with your board, and how much did you draw as allowances out of that? And then the second one is, the last I saw, the artisanal miners were removed from that area. These companies that you say were not licensed and were not operating optimally, or they were operating but not effectively, compared to what? And who are these companies? Was the revenue also accounted for those people who were not artisanal miners, but who were operating not as much as you wanted them to operate?
Okay, I will start with the last question about some of the companies that had not operated. I think they are here. They can answer for themselves, but our understanding is that the investors who were the partners didn't bring enough resources to get these companies going. And I'm talking of Kusena, I'm talking of Jinyami, and I'm talking of Rera. The others, the investors that brought some resources to be able to operate.
Okay, I think we now want to move to the DMDC. The role of the DMDC. You are responsible for the mining operations on down of the government of Zimbabwe. The joint ventures which have been talked about, how did you mine, from a performance point of view, the JV partners, they also play their part. I think these are issues. ZCDC company which was set up, was it a board resolution, Chairman? You heard the PEMSEC says it came from you. Now the ball is in your court. Thank you. The board chair first, can you take off?
Sorry, Chair. You cannot answer the question.
You see what I thought on those questions, they all came with all the I thought they are quite important, and you must keep that in terms of the artisanal miners and those who are not licensed, but helped by the ministry. It was interesting.
The board, how many times did that board sit?
I think those are issues which I think we're asking, and I think the ZMTC board chairperson is here. As you heard, it was formed by ZMDC, and I think that's the question, where the ZMDC who formed the company must then respond to that from a corporate governance point of view. Millions coming from the subsidiary, whether they or not. I think
Don't you need to clarify that? Don't you need to clarify?